Hey, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining me. My name is Dennis Brown, and this is my weekly Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Today, I'm going to share with you 16 critical lessons, right? 16 critical lessons for freight broker startup. So if you're considering or thinking about starting a freight broker business or a freight agency business, or you're in startup mode right now and you're just getting started, this is designed for you. So I hope you guys stay with us. Here's what we're going to do. It's really simple. We're going to do some shout outs. So hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in from. We'll do some quick shout outs. Then we're going to do the training, and then we're going to go do live Q&A at the end. That's basically my format every week. So let's start with some shout outs, guys. Let's see who's here. We got Carl Gills from Bethlehem, Georgia. Welcome. We got Cynthia, as always, from Maryland. We got Ricky Aguilar. Welcome from Oxnard, California. We got Finish Line Logistics coming in from Sacramento. Betty Jones from Wilson, North Carolina. So we got people coming in from all over the place. Some people are watching this on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. I stream it on all of those channels. And again, we do this every week, every Monday at noon Eastern time. So you can always mark that in your calendars or on your smartphone or whatever you want to do, set a reminder. But I do these lives every single week. Okay. So hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in from. Again, we'll do some shout outs. And then from there, we will we'll jump into the training. So I'm going to grab a quick drink while we're waiting, and then we'll get the show on the road in just a minute. I got a lot of notes today. 16 lessons, okay? 16 lessons and tips that I think are going to be really important to some of you, okay? Alexander from Chi-Town, welcome. John from Austin, Texas. Gulbahar Singh from Parsippany, New Jersey, welcome. If I murder your name, I apologize. Number one, they're very small. Number two, I'm horrible at enunciating names. Don't take it personal. Corey from Billings, Montana, welcome, as always. Got a lot of people on YouTube, it seems. A couple of Alexanders on LinkedIn. I stream it on all those channels because I don't know where you guys want to watch it. I only used to stream it only on Facebook at one point, and then I did Facebook and YouTube, and now I do Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So Philippe from Medellin, Colombia, I assume. Or Medellin, I'm not sure. All right. So again, today I'm going to share with you 16 critical lessons for freight broker startups. Okay. A lot of notes to go over. Thank you guys for being here. And we're going to get the show on the road in about another 60 seconds. And then without further ado, we'll jump right into the training. Okay. Colombia. That's what I thought. We got Kaira Reed from Florence, South Carolina. Welcome. So we have people from all over the place. Awesome. I love it. The TMP Hustle from San Antonio. Carlos from North Carolina. Good. All right, cool. So we're going to get the show on the road here. Let me just review my notes really quick to make sure I don't leave anything out or miss anything. And then we'll get going, all right? You might have ice today. Welcome to my world. I'm in Buffalo. We probably have 6 inches of snow on the ground right now or more. Nick from the Republic of Moldova. Ah, cool. Nick Brom. All right. Sweet. We got people from all over. We got people from Colombia, Moldova, all over the United States, probably Canada, because there's usually some Canadian folks in here. Deborah from Wisconsin. Good. All right. Sweet. So here we go. 16 lessons, 16 critical lessons that every freight broker startup needs to know. That's what we're going to talk about today. Okay. So do you think starting a freight brokerage or a freight agency is easy? I did. I started my freight brokerage back in 2003 and I had zero experience. but I really, really wish I could have done things smarter to speed up the results. Now, we were very blessed, don't get me wrong. So to make growing your freight brokerage business 10 times easier, I've put together 16 critical lessons, 16 brutal truths around starting and growing a successful freight broker business. Okay. Plus, at the last minute, I added a bonus tip that I'm going to share with you at the very, very end. You got to stick around for that. If you forget everything else I say today, make sure you listen to that bonus tip. Okay. This is a critical one. All right. So here we go. Without further ado, I'm going to jump right in. Number one, you need to start thinking in terms of 5-year timelines, like a 5-year timeline. A lot of new startups think in terms of 5 days or 5 months. You need to start thinking long term, right? 5 years. You'll be amazed what you can accomplish in 5 years, right? Nothing worthwhile is easy and nothing is going to happen quick. It's always going to take twice as long as you think. And it's always going to be, and it can be 10 times harder than you thought, right? But anything worthwhile is worth keeping your eye on the prize. You've got to keep your eye on the prize. You've got to create some consistency over a long period of time to have any significant results. So that's number one. Lesson number two, surround yourself with like-minded people. For example, other freight broker startups, other entrepreneurial startups, right? Those are the types of people you want to surround yourself with, right? Other business startups, other entrepreneurs, other freight brokers and freight agents. And the reason being is because those people are going to understand what you're going through. They're going to understand the challenges. They're going to understand your struggles and are going to be way more empathetic and understanding of those issues. And you're going to garner confidence. You're going to garner energy, and it's going to make for a much better, result if you are able to surround yourself with those people. Okay. So that's lesson number two. Lesson number three, pain signifies growth. Well, let me explain to you what I mean by that. You are going to run into objections. You are going to fail along the way. That's just part of the process. The problem with most people is when they get rejected or they feel any sort of pain, right? Or they have any sort of a failure, 99% of people quit. That's when they quit. When the times get tough, they leave, they quit, they exit, right? And so you have to make sure that you understand that when you start feeling that pain, that signifies growth, because you are going to have to go through that pain in order to get to the other side and see any sort of success, okay? Very important. It's a mindset you have to understand. Lesson number 4, ignore the haters. And there are always going to be haters. Sometimes they're your family. Sometimes they're your friends. Sometimes they're on social media, right? But there are always going to be haters. When I first started, there were all kinds of haters. They would say, what do you know about logistics, Dennis? You know nothing about trucking. You know what I mean? Why would you do that? Why don't you just go get a job with benefits, right? That's what I heard. I heard that from a lot of people. And these are people that I knew, right? So always ignore the haters, right? The only thing that haters are good for is to fuel your motivation, but don't listen to their negativity, okay? So ignore the haters. Lesson number 5, find motivation, right? Find motivation from other brokers and other entrepreneurs. Kind of relates back to number 1, but sometimes you don't know these people, but you can get inspired and motivated by the success of others. I remember when I first got started and I had no customers, there were brokers out there that I was watching and seeing and watching the things that they were doing and seeing how they were growing. And I used that as motivation. I used that as inspiration, right? Today, it's a lot easier because of social media and the internet is a lot more prolific. But I started my brokerage back in 2003, 2004, right? So now today, it's even easier, whether that be on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or Facebook or wherever. There's always somebody out there that's willing and able to inspire you, whether they be a freight broker or an entrepreneur, right? So use that, right? Find motivation from others around you, right? And number 6, lesson number 6, Stop comparing yourself to others. This is a big one, and I want you to really lean in on this one. Because even though I want you to garner inspiration from others by watching others that are having success, you should never compare yourself to others. I call it compare-itis, right? Compare-itis has killed more freight brokers and entrepreneurs than any disease, okay? Because when you try to compare your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 7, right, in the book, of course they're much further along. Of course they've had more results. They've been doing it longer. They've made the mistakes. They've went through the rejection. They've had the failures, and they've come out the other side. You have yet to do that. So you can't compare your chapter 1 to their chapter 7, okay? So comparing yourself to others and compare-itis is an absolute death kiss, okay? So avoid comparing yourself to others, all right? Number 7, consistency wins. All right, you hear this all the time. Be consistent, right? You've got to be consistent. And when I say consistent, I'm not talking about a day or a week or a month. This kind of relates back to the earlier one that I talked about, which is you'll be absolutely shocked what you can accomplish in 5 years, right? If you could put your head down and focus for 5 years, you'll be absolutely shocked. Let me give you an example. Personal story myself. Started the freight brokerage in 2003, 2004, had zero experience, had zero customers, had zero employees, had zero carriers, had nothing, right? You know more now than I did when I first got started. But I focused intently. And in 5 years, just the first 5 years, we went from zero to over $18 million a year in sales and highly profitable and growing, right? So that's an example of what you can accomplish if you stay consistent, right? If you are consistent day in and day out, right? So consistency is going to create, it's kind of like, interest, right? It has exponential growth, and that's what consistency does for you, okay? So that's number 7. Number 8, and again, remember, stick around. I've got 16 of these lessons I'm going to share with you, but most important, there's a bonus lesson at the end that you really need to hear and you really need to understand. And if you don't listen to anything else I say here, make sure you tune in for that bonus lesson, okay? So number 8, prospect or die. All right, so I've heard people say this many times. I don't like sales. I'm not good at sales. I don't like rejection, right? Here's the reality. You are not going to build a successful business unless you learn how to prospect. If you learn how to use cold calling and cold emailing and LinkedIn and face-to-face selling, and you learn those fundamentals, you're not going to be successful as a freight broker. It's just the way it is. All right. So you have to prospect or die. And then the other part of it is, let's say you get going and you get your first customer or 2 or 3 customers, and then you start getting real busy with doing quotes and following up on loads and doing the operational stuff. I hear people say it all the time. I'm too busy to prospect. Listen, if you're too busy to prospect, then you need to hire somebody to help you on the operations side so you can stay focused on getting new customers and retaining those clients, right? That takes time. And so again, prospect or die is a critical component. It's a critical lesson because I find a lot of people avoid prospecting and they focus on other easier things, which just don't have the same sort of impact on your business. Okay. Number 9, confidence sells. Confidence sells, right? And the reality is this: if you have to fake it till you make it, then so be it. I'm not crazy about that saying, but if the difference is this: if you have somebody that calls you up and is talking real quiet and kind of real mealy mouth and they're real hesitant and you can tell they don't have any confidence, or if somebody calls you up and is very confident with the way they're talking, you can hear the tone of their voice, you can hear the enthusiasm, you can hear the passion, you can hear the knowledge that they have. It conveys, right? It sells. Confidence sells. So again, if you got to fake it till you make it, do what you have to do. But the reality is you have to sell confidently. You can't sell from weakness. Okay. All right. Number 10. We're already at number 10. Wow. Understand your niche. All right. So you've probably heard me say this a million times before. Riches are in niches. And I'm a huge believer in niching down as a freight broker or freight agent startup, right? It's very difficult to be everything to everybody, right? So niching down is important, but that means you need to understand your niche. If you're going in the van niche, or you're going in the flatbed niche, or if you're going to focus in on oil and gas, or you're going to focus in on produce, whatever your niche is, or whatever your hybrid niche is, a combination of industry, equipment, geography, whatever you decide to do, you have to understand that niche, right? You have to focus on developing your knowledge around that niche so that you can, number one, speak the lingo, but number one, you can garner confidence from other people when they have questions for you and when you're talking about your niche, right? So niching down is very important. Understanding your niche, doing the research and understanding that, very, very important, okay? Number 11, focus on quality over quantity. I would much prefer that you do 50 sales calls a day, right? Where you're gathering sales intelligence and you've had a compelling, an interesting and unique sales hook, and you're doing a multi-touch point outreach strategy with LinkedIn and with email and with face-to-face and different channels. I'd much prefer to see that than somebody just blindly picking up the phone and dialing the phone 200 times a day with some generic, outdated sales script that every shipping manager's already heard, and all you're going to do is trigger a negative response. So quality over quantity. And yes, there's a balance, right? You can't just make 3 sales calls a day and expect to get anywhere. But you should be able to make 40 to 50 to maybe 75 calls a day using a quality strategy or a quality system, right? And have a much bigger impact than 200 blind dials a day, okay? So focus on quality over quantity, okay? All right, number 12. This is a big one. Lean in on this one. Be different. I heard a quote years ago, and the quote goes like this. It's by Sally Hogshead, okay? Most of you probably never heard of her, but she's kind of the person who I heard this quote from, and it's, different is better than better. Let me explain to you what I mean. Most people in business are trying to be better communications, better software, better pricing, right? Better customer service, right? Better website, better marketing, right? Better is good, but it's hard to be better than everybody at everything. It's hard to be better than all of your competition in all of those categories, right? You should strive for that, but the reality is you're never going to be better than everybody at everything, right? But here's the caveat. Different is easy. Being different is not difficult. It's easy to be different than other people, different in the way you market, different in the way you sell, right? Different in the way you engage your clients, right? Being different is not that difficult, right? But that's where this whole concept of different is better than better comes from. So be different. Your goal is to not sound like any other salesperson that they've ever spoke to before. And that's a big part of what I teach in my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program. And again, if you guys wanted to check that out, you could get on the wait list for that. It's sold out right now. But if you wanted to get on the wait list for that, you could just go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. Again, you get on the wait list. It's absolutely free. We notify you when spots open up, and then you get all the details. And then hopefully you'll be able to enroll, and I'd be able to be your Freight Broker sales coach. I've trained over 1,000 students through that program, had a lot of great success stories, been very, very blessed. So you could check that out again at freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. Okay. All right. So that's number 12, which is be different. Number 13, use sales intelligence to stand out. Now, I just talked about that a little bit in the last one. So sales intelligence, first, let me define it for you. Sales intelligence is any data that you can gather from the internet or otherwise that enhances your opportunity to get the sale. So, for example, checking out their website and looking specifically what type of products they make, looking at their press releases, searching Google for industry news related to the company or the specific product or industry, looking on LinkedIn and identifying who the key decision makers are, looking at a little bit about their work history. There's any data that you can use to help you throughout the sales process whether that be in your cold call or whether that while you're navigating the sale, that enhances your opportunity to get the sale, okay? That's sales intelligence. Leverage sales intelligence. Never go into a sales call blind. If you have a lead list like this and you're just smiling and dialing and you don't know what these companies do and you've done no research on them, stop. Please stop. It's a huge mistake. Spend 2 or 3 or 4 minutes gathering some sales intelligence, educate yourself, and you'll be shocked at the results, okay? Number 14. Social proof is like gold dripped with honey. Okay, so social proof is, for example, testimonials, recommendations, case studies, right? So testimonials and social proof are one of the most powerful tools that I've ever used in sales. So your goal as a freight broker, freight agent, is every customer that you do business with, from your first customer to your last customer, your goal should be to get a written or video testimonial from every client. Now imagine if you had 10 of those testimonials and the next time you reached out to a new prospect, every time you talked to them or emailed or met with them, you shared a new testimonial from a new client telling a slightly different story of why they like doing business with you. That sort of social proof is what builds trust, right? And again, remember, trust is the biggest barrier. It's not price. It's trust. And social proof builds that trust. Perfect example, think about it. When you go to Amazon, one of the first things you do when you find a product is you look at how many reviews it has, how many stars it has. And then you look at the actual reviews and then you make a purchasing decision. The same thing goes in the freight brokerage world, right? So again, social proof is like gold dripped with honey, okay? Number 15, and make sure you stick around. Again, the bonus tip, I'm going to give you 16 lessons here, and then I'm going to give you a bonus tip, so stick around for that. Number 15, learn from every loss and every win. What do I mean by that? When you're on a sales call and you get an objection and you're not able to overcome that objection and the call ends, what do you need to do? You need to process that loss. You need to process that failure so that the next time that happens, you've learned and you'll be able to overcome that issue, okay? The same thing with wins. Let's say, for example, you get an objection from a prospect and then you overcome that objection. And then eventually that client gives you an opportunity for a meeting or quoting, or they become your customer. Learn from that win. What you want to do is repeat the things that are working, right? And eliminate the things that aren't. So that's what I mean by learn from your wins and learn from your losses, okay? And number 16, be an expert, not a phone jockey. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Customers love to talk to experts. They hate to talk to salespeople. That's just the reality. If you are an expert or you are perceived as an expert in your niche, in your business, okay, people love to talk to experts. They don't like talking to salespeople. They don't like talking to phone jockeys that just smile and dial and know nothing about their business and are just looking for luck and hoping for luck in order to land a client, right? So what you need to do is position yourself as an expert in your niche, whether that be through your website, whether that be through your LinkedIn profile, whether that be through your email signature, whether that be through your communications, digital or verbal or video or face-to-face. You need to position yourself as an expert in your niche. Focus on being that expert in your niche, and then you can always expand on that later. But people want to do business with smart people. They love talking to experts. They hate talking to salespeople. That's number 16. And the bonus tip, all right, drum roll, please. The bonus tip, relationships over transactions. Now, you may have heard me say this before, but it is so freaking important. You need to hear it again. Most new brokers are focused on transactional business, whether that be with a shipper, whether that be with a carrier, right? They're focused on transactions. You need to focus on the relationships. It's better to make a little bit less upfront and more on the back end than it is to make a lot up front and then not retain that client. Because the reality is customer retention is the key to long-term success. The way you do that, under promise, over deliver, right? That's always been my motto, under promise, over deliver. And then what you have to understand is that the lifetime value of a shipper could be millions and millions of dollars over the 3, 4, 5, 10-year period. So it's not about that one load, right? And the same thing goes for carriers, right? Rather than trying to beat a carrier down to the rock bottom basement price, what you're better off doing is paying a little bit more and developing a strong relationship with them where you can do business with them again. Because I promise you, if you beat up a carrier, they're never going to want to do business with you again. And so now you can't use that relationship, whereas that relationship could serve you for years to come, and it could be a mutually beneficial relationship. So relationships over transactions, very, very important, okay? And so listen, for those of you that are sticking around to the end here, thank you so much. I appreciate it. If you're some of my best fans, thank you for being here. If you guys want to get on the wait list for the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator, check it out at freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. That's where I take this piece of my brain and I teach you everything I know about freight broker sales and getting customers. And it's in an 8-week live coaching program. Okay. So if you're looking for sales training, if you're looking for sales coaching, that's where you're going to go. If you're just looking for freight broker startup, then just go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com. If you're just getting started as a freight broker, freight agent, check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com. Trained over 10,000 students, had that program for over 15 years. And we offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money-back guarantee. So thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Hit the like button, share the stream, and I'll see you next Monday on the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Okay, cool. So for those of you that are going to stick around for the live Q&A, hold your questions, okay? Hold your questions. I'm just reading some comments here, okay? But first of all, before we jump into Q&A, I want to ask you guys a question. Of all of those, first of all, it's a two-part question. Hit me up in the comments. 1 to 10. Dennis, 1, this was terrible and a waste of my time. 10, this was perfect. I got a lot of great things out of this that I'm going to take with me. And then add in there, which was your favorite lesson? Which one of those lessons do you believe was the most valuable for you, where you are in your journey? Whether that be, hey, I'm just getting started with some freight broker training, or hey, I'm just getting my freight broker authority, or maybe you're starting to get customers and carriers and you're just starting to build this up. Tell me which one of those lessons you thought was most valuable to you. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know. And then eventually we will, and then in the next minute or two after this, we'll jump into Q&A. Hold your questions, okay? Because your questions are going to get lost somewhere in the feed, okay? And then wait, and I'll tell you when to put your questions in, and then we'll jump into Q&A. Wow, that was a little longer than I thought it was going to be. I should have known with 16. Originally, I had like 40. And then I consolidated some and got rid of a few and just kind of like tweaked it, and it came down to 16. Well, actually 17, because I added that bonus tip at the end. But yeah. All right. 1 to 10, what do you got? 1, this was terrible. 10, this is right on the spot. Anywhere below a 7 or below, tell me what I could do better. I'm looking for your feedback. I'm waiting for you guys, right? Once I get a little bit of feedback from you, I'll jump into Q&A. And make sure if you found value, hit the like button, right? If you're on LinkedIn, repost it to your stream, right? Repost it to your feed. Okay, 10, 10. Cool. All right. So this has been good for you guys. Anybody else? Ricky, thank you. And Ricky, I'll see you live on our Freight Broker Sales Accelerator Wednesday, right? Because Ricky's part of my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator coaching. So I coach Ricky on freight broker sales, how to get customers, right? All of that, my entire freight broker sales system. So he's a part of that Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program. So congratulations to Ricky. He just joined the program not long ago, and I'm excited to work with him. All right, good. Relationships over transactions. Good. Thank you, Rad Freight Broker. Hold your questions, guys. Hold your questions till I say, because otherwise they're going to get lost. Okay, good. All right, sweet. Okay. Nice. Good feedback. Thank you. All right. So listen, we're going to jump into Q&A. If you guys have questions, hit me up in the comments. Let me know what your question is. Try to be specific about your questions. If you ask me questions like, how do I get shippers? That's way too generic, right? I'm going to give you a generic answer. But if you ask me, should I do cold calls or should I be doing cold email? You get real specific, then it's a lot easier for me to give you something meaningful, right? And so we're going to spend maybe the next 15 to 30 minutes doing some Q&A. And then I got a bolt. I got a lot of shit to do today. I'm sure you guys do too. All right. So first question, who's got the first question? Carlos. So you say it's a good idea to surround yourself with people in the same business as you, make you stronger. I want you plan to do. Not sure if that's a question, but thank you. All right. Who's got questions? Thank you, Betty. Thank you, Carlos, for the feedback. Thank you, John. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Ricky. Rad, Freight Broker, Deborah. Thank you, everybody, for the feedback. So Jordan says, start a freight broker in the US. Sure. Jordan, yeah, no problem. You can start a freight brokerage from Thailand. You just need to be able to meet all the requirements of a licensed freight broker through the FMCSA. It's not that hard. You got to file for your authority. You got to get a broker bond. You got to do your BOC3. You got to do your UCR, some basic stuff. But yeah, it's not that difficult. There are freight brokers that don't live in the United States. There are also freight agents. If you can't get your freight brokers or you're struggling to get your freight brokers, start as a freight agent. I've had put over 10,000 students through this program. And the last time I checked, it was in over 16 different countries. Okay. So there's people all around the world that are freight brokers and freight agents. Okay. The TMP Hustle says, I know you're a fan of riches and niches, but how do you find a niche that's sustainable or profitable or not overly saturated? Okay. So the more you niche down, okay, the easier it's going to be to break through the noise. So let me explain to you what I mean. When I first got started, I had to figure out what my niche was. So what I chose as my niche, and you may have heard this story before, was van loads, right? Full truckload van loads that originated in the Northeast, New York, PA, New Jersey, all the way up through, New England, right? If they originated and picked up in that area and were going west or south, that was my niche. Now, why did I do that? Why didn't I just pick the van niche? Because the van niche is way too broad. It's way too difficult to become an expert overnight in just the van niche because it's too big, right? It's a van that's picking up in, Regina, Saskatchewan that's going to Houston. I have no idea what that's going to cost, and I have no idea what carriers to call. And then the next call would be a load picking up in Tampa going to Atlanta, right? So there's no synergies there. So I created a niche that I could, number one, specialize in and get very, very good at capacity and rates and understanding the challenges of that niche. And then I dove hard into that niche. Now, over time, we expanded into other niches like refrigerated and flatbed and heavy haul and other regions of the country and other lanes and different modes of transportation. But we started with niches. And so what I'm going to tell you is that complexity, right? The more complex niche you have, the less competition you are typically going to have. Now, so what I mean by that is, if you're just doing van loads, maybe rather than just doing van loads, you're doing hazmat van loads, because now there's an extra level of complexity there, right? Or for example, rather than just doing van loads, maybe you're doing cross-border van loads from US to Canada or US to Mexico. Maybe that's your niche. And again, I'm just giving you examples of how adding a layer of complexity is going to decrease your competition. But the more generic you are, the more competition there is. Okay? So I hope that helps. I hope that makes sense. Okay, question from Ricky. Is it legit to start dispatching carriers as long as they have their DOT and MC? And what is a legit percentage to charge for that? Ricky, I don't teach independent dispatch. I'm not a big fan of independent dispatch. I don't care how anybody makes their money. But the reality is that you can become an independent dispatcher. But again, I don't teach that. What I hear in most cases from a fee is somewhere between 5 and 15% is what they charge the carrier. But again, I don't teach dispatch. It's a different business. It's one component of our business. And there's a lot of limitations. You can't have your own direct shippers. There's a lot of limitations based on how the FMCSA is defining independent dispatch versus a broker. But what you're going to find is there's a lot of independent dispatchers out there that are acting as brokers without a license. And just so you know, if they get busted, it's a $10,000 fine. Okay. For each instance, it's a $10,000 fine. Okay. So not just in general, if they were to dispatch 10 loads and the FMCSA or the Department of Justice, whoever, were able to identify that they were acting as a broker, right? Because they weren't meeting the guidelines, that's $10,000 fine per instance. So that'd be $100,000 just with 10 loads you dispatch. Sorry, guys. I don't know how long was the mic out. Just for a minute. Can you guys hear me now? I think I banged the mic somehow. Can you hear me now? Ugh. So I think it was out for 2 minutes. Sorry. Is it back? Let me know if you guys can hear me. Somehow I got to fix this mic. I don't know why every single time there's a little bump. Okay. So I don't know where I was. I was talking about, let's see, what was I talking about? I was talking about I was talking about email, right? We were talking about email. So what I was saying about email was, Yes, email can work, but what I teach in my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator is a multi-touch point outreach strategy. And what I mean by that is, we use email, we use LinkedIn, we use the phone, and we put that in face-to-face, and we put that in a sales cadence that allows us to double or triple the number of contacts that we get to speak to on any given day, week, or month. Because remember, this is a contact sport. You can't do anything until you start a dialogue, right? And so we teach that multi-touch point outreach strategy, but email is just one part of that, because there are certain people that are never going to respond to you via email. But then there are other people that prefer to respond to you via email. So if you do that multi-touch point where you're touching them via the phone and email and LinkedIn and face-to-face, you've now exponentially increased your odds of actually having a conversation, okay? So I hope that helps. Let me jump on to the next question here if I can find it. Sorry about the audio there, guys. Sorry. Betty asks, Dennis, I love to talk face-to-face. Is it okay to just show up at a shipper? If I cannot speak with the correct person, can I leave a file or business card? Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, you can just drop in. I mean, it's always better if you have an appointment, but sometimes that can be challenging just to get them on the phone. So yeah, jumping in there and talking to the receptionist, or going around the back and jumping on the dock and having a conversation with somebody and leaving some information, maybe bringing them donuts or something. I mean, those are all great ways to try to get some face time, to try to break through the noise, right? Yeah. So I think face-to-face is incredibly powerful when possible. Unfortunately, it's just not always possible, right? I live in Buffalo. If I got clients in Pittsburgh or Philly or Boston, it's just not realistic that I'm going to be able to drop in unless I schedule an entire road trip and spend the day there or a couple days there just dropping in, which can be valuable. But the reality is it just takes a lot of time and energy and resources, right? So in those situations, I'd prefer to use the phone. But whenever possible, I'd always use face-to-face whenever possible. Yeah. So I think dropping in is fine, particularly if you're comfortable talking, right? But again, remember, be different. All right, when you're dropped in. I'm just scrolling through the questions. Give me a minute. Okay, question from Life in 4K. When's a good time frame to call shippers? I sometimes wait between 11 and 12. Listen, here's the reality. We have East Coast and West Coast. We're 3 hours apart. So the East Coast, or the West Coast, a lot of times will operate a little bit earlier in the day because they have to focus. They also have to accommodate for West Coast time frame. Here's what I tell you: you need to, depending on where you are in your business. If you're a brand new startup, you should be calling all day. If you're an established broker who's already got a small customer base, then I would probably budget out some times. I would probably dedicate some times or schedule some specific times in maybe 2-hour blocks where you're going to start doing some prospecting or cold calling, or, where you're going to start doing that outreach. I personally don't think there's any specific time. I think, you can catch people. Difficult to catch people that you're calling over and over. Sometimes calling them at lunch or before 8 or after 5 is a great time, because sometimes when that phone stops ringing and then all of a sudden they get back to their desk, all of a sudden they might answer the phone. Other times, I don't think there's any specific time. Anybody that tells you there's an exact time that you can call is just completely BSing you. So I think you just need to dedicate some time in the morning, dedicate some time in the afternoon. And then when you don't get people on the phone in the AM, mark that in your notes and then call them in the PM, and then maybe you can get them, right? So that might be a good strategy to differentiate when you're calling, to try to accommodate when they're at their desk or open to talking. So I hope that helps. Rad Freight Brokerage. My question is about insurance verification. When looking at auto liability section in the scheduled autos, can you verify the VIN numbers? You can verify the VIN numbers, but can you verify the specific drivers? No, you can't, not from the insurance. And I don't think the insurance company, if you call to verify, number one, they probably won't answer your call. But number two, I don't think they'll verify the actual drivers, but they'll verify the VINs. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm not sure of an easy way to verify the actual drivers. Obviously, you can verify if they have a CDL, right? You could add in your contract that every driver needs to be listed under the insurance and insured. So, I mean, those are things you can do, but I don't know an easy way you can verify the actual drivers that are covered. Question: as a new broker, should I sign a contract with a shipper or not? Got one contract which was very anti-broker and pro-shipper. That you need to make a decision. There are a certain amount of shippers that have their own shipper carrier, shipper broker contract. Many shippers are that way. So they're going to send you their agreement. You're going to have to review that agreement. And you're going to have to agree to those terms. If they are asking you to act as a carrier, or they are identifying you as a carrier, as a motor carrier, not a broker, be very careful, because that creates a liability issue. If you sign an agreement saying that you're acting as a carrier and then there's an issue down the road, a catastrophic loss or a death or some sort of major accident, that documentation is going to show you've been acting as a carrier, even though you're acting as a broker. So be very careful with that. But yeah, on an individual basis, you're going to have to make sure that the terms fit for you. And if they do, then you sign it. If they don't, then you move on or you negotiate it, right? Don't be afraid to negotiate terms in a contract. I mean, some shippers will do that, some shippers won't. But I've negotiated specific terms out of a contract or revised the words, and those agreements have been accepted. In most cases, they're probably not going to do that, but you can try. So I hope that helps. Fair percentage to pay for factoring. It's probably going to be, depending on whether it's recourse or no recourse, it's probably going to be somewhere in the range of maybe 2 to 5%, with an average maybe being in the 3 to 3.5%, right? Depending on if it's recourse or non-recourse. So yeah, it's fairly small, but if you're a startup, you might pay a little bit more. Sometimes it's based upon how quickly the invoices are paid. So if a shipper pays in 30 days, you get this percentage, but if they pay in 60 days, you pay a little higher percentage. So there's a lot of variables there, but I would say somewhere in the 2 to 4 or 5% range, 2 to 5%. All right, I'm scrolling. Regarding insurance verification, verifying carrier's name, address, cargo and liability amount, confirming auto liability section of truckloads. What else should I check? Your responsibility is to make sure that the carrier is insured and that they have at least the minimum insurance that are required to cover for that load. So if you have a load that's worth $100,000, and you got to have at least $100,000 in cargo, okay? If you have a load that's $200,000 value, then you have to make sure the carrier has $200,000 insurance, or you have some sort of supplemental insurance. As far as liability, BIPD, it's $1 million minimum. So you got to have $1 million BIPD. As far as, the basics, like make sure the address on the FMCSA, make sure the address on the insurance match up, make sure it's a legit insurance certificate, right? And it's not something that's been forged or doctored, right? So so I think those are the basics from an insurance verification perspective. Yeah, those are the basics that you need. Mr. Abdi, can you drive dis semi and do dispatch freight broker, and how can you start freight business? So yeah, you can be a driver and become a freight broker or freight agent simultaneously. Now, doing it part-time is going to take longer, and of course it's harder because you're juggling 2 jobs, right? Here's what I tell everybody: you can start this business part-time, but you can't start it in your spare time. So what I mean by that is, if you can put 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 hours a day into it, I think it's worth doing part-time. If you can only put 2 hours a week into it, then I probably think it's not. Okay. Because I'm not trying to BS you here. You know what I mean? A couple hours a week isn't going to get it done. Right. So yeah, you can start it in your part-time, but you can't start it in your spare time. As far as starting the business, here's what I would tell you. Go download. Let's see. I'm going to give you a free download here. Okay. That'll walk you through step by step. Go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/7 steps. Okay, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/7 steps. You can download a free report which walks you through the 7 steps you need in order to become a freight broker. Okay, it's a free download, absolutely free. You can check that out. All right. Anybody who's in startup mode, who's curious about becoming a freight broker, and you're looking for some guidance, this is an absolute free report. You can download it. It'll take you 60 seconds, and then you can go through it, and it gives you a step-by-step walkthrough of exactly what you need to do to go from start to Jump Street, okay? Hope that helps. Carlos says, is there a good idea before making contact with a shipper for their business to look on their website to research the company? Absolutely, 100%. That's what I talked about when I talked about gathering sales intelligence. You should absolutely look at their website. You should absolutely look at the products that they sell. You should absolutely look at the news center or the press releases or things that are going on inside the company. You should understand those basic things, right? The last thing you want to do is what I hear a lot of people do. They call up, they start talking to a shipper, and then the shipper's like, yeah. And then they're like, well, what do you guys ship? How in the hell are you going to call a prospect and you don't even know what they make? It's the dumbest thing in the world. You should already know the products they make. And the more you can speak to those products based upon your niche, if you're in the steel industry, there's a million different steel type products. It's not just bars of steel. There's a million different steel related products. Okay. If you're in the produce industry, think of all the different types of vegetables and produce that you have. They're all different. They're all nuanced. They all need to be treated differently. Okay. They're all perishable, but they all need to be, sometimes they can't be mixed. Sometimes they need to be at a specific temperature. Sometimes some are more perishable than others, but I'm just giving you an example. You need to understand what that company does. Gathering sales intelligence before that is very, very important. Good question. Arthur asks, do I need general liability insurance, contingent cargo, and cargo liability? No. You do not need any of those to be a licensed freight broker. You do not need any of those to be a freight agent. Now, are those optional coverages that you can get? Yes. Now, I didn't get them when I first started because I didn't need them. But I did get them shortly down the road, individually, not all at once, based upon the needs, right? So if you have a client that you feel comfortable you're going to be able to do business with and generate a decent amount of revenue, then you might go out and get general liability if that's one of the requirements. You might go out and get, contingent cargo if that's one of the requirements. But not everybody requires either of those or any of those. So my suggestion is go out and try to get some shippers without spending that money, right? Be frugal, right? Try to be lean. Try not to overspend when you don't need to. And then if you start running into those roadblocks, you can always contact those people back after you secure the insurance. Okay? So I hope that helps. Easiest way to get freight agent job without experience? Good question. Okay. So here's what you don't want to do. You do not want to try to reach out to all the big agent-based freight brokerages. There's 2 reasons why. Number one, because they're bigger companies, they're probably going to be going after people with a book of business. Number 2, even if they don't require a book of business, they're very large, and all of the large clients and shippers are already going to be taken and protected by other agents. So it's going to limit your opportunity. Those are the 2 big reasons. What you want to do is you want to focus on small to medium-sized brokers that have been in business for maybe a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and are looking to scale and are looking to grow. Okay, those are your target audience, whether they be local or wherever they are in the country. All right, and then what you're going to do is you're going to set up a good LinkedIn profile, right? So you have a LinkedIn profile, and you're going to optimize that to make you look like you're legitimate and that you know what you're talking about. And then you're going to try to find who that person is, the sales manager or business development manager or agent recruiter or whoever, and you're going to try to connect with them on LinkedIn and start a dialogue. And then you're going to follow up with a phone call. And your job is you're simply looking for an opportunity to work on straight commission, somewhere in the range of 50 to 70%. Explain your niche, explain that you've been through certain trainings, explain you have sales experience from your past job, whatever your qualifications are, and ask for an opportunity. If you do that and you reach out and you have a conversation with 30, 40, 50 brokers, okay, not a lot. I mean, there's 20,000 plus brokers, 50 brokers, you're going to get an opportunity on a straight commission basis. I've never had anybody that's actually went out and done that didn't get hired as an agent. The problem is, here's what happens. You go out and reach out to the big companies like my old company, Logistic Dynamics. They're not going to hire agents without a book or a significant amount of experience. Why? Because they don't need to. Right? So if you were to talk to us when I launched the agent program in the first, maybe in year 3 of the brokerage, and you had some training and you had a little bit of credibility, and I believe that you were a hustler, you probably could have got hired as an agent back then with no experience or book, but not now. So you need to find those companies that are in the younger stages that are looking to grow. Now, you want to make sure they have good credit. You want to make sure they have good technology. That's why you want to make sure they've been in business for at least a year or 2 or 3, and they've got other agents and they understand the agent business model. But yeah, that's the basics. But I've never had anybody make a list of 50 companies like that, reach out to them and all and not get hired. The reason why they quit is because the first 5 tell them no, they quit. Just like 99% of the people out there, if they get any sort of rejection or resistance or failure, they just fold up shop and quit. And then they say, oh, no one will hire me. That's bullshit. It's bullshit. You just quit or you're lazy. Sorry, I'm just being honest. And Lydia, not anything negative towards you, but other people have asked me this question and said, oh, they won't hire people with no experience or book. That's crap. It's total crap. I have people who go through my course all the time that get hired and they have no experience or book of business, but they went through my training. They followed the steps, and now they're working as an agent, 50 to 70% commission. Typically starting out, you're going to get maybe 50% commission. That's how it works. That's why you need to put it in the broker carrier agreement that all vehicles and drivers operating for said carrier are insured. And then anybody who's not, the broker's not liable, right? So you're going to make sure that the carrier assumes liability for that if they do that. So that's your protection. That's the best protection you're going to get. I'm scrolling here looking for interesting questions. Give me a minute. Arthur, what do I send for a COI to a shipper? Well, if you're a broker and you don't have insurance, you don't send anything. If they require insurance, then you're going to send whatever insurance you have that they require. That makes sense? Not all shippers are going to require a COI from you, which is a certificate of insurance, right? Some will, some won't. If they require a certificate of insurance, they're going to say, okay, you have to ask them, well, what type of insurance do you require? General liability, car, what do you require, right? Contingent cargo. If they require those, then you got to go get those. If not, you just put them to the side in a separate pile and go find somebody else, start generating some revenue, because not all companies require. Matter of fact, very few companies in the big scheme of things require you to have general liability, contingent cargo, and any sort of insurance like that. Most people don't believe me, but I'm telling you right now, majority of shippers out there don't require it. The large companies almost always require it. The small to medium-sized companies don't. I'm scrolling here. How many sales calls? Let's see, what time is it? Okay, I got to roll. This is gonna be the last question. Maybe I'll try to come back in and answer some of the questions in the chat box later this week. How many sales calls should brokers call a day? I'm a big believer in quality over quantity. When you first get started, I'm saying it's going to range somewhere between 50 and 100. Okay. If you can gather sales intelligence and do research, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes on their website, on their LinkedIn, using Google, as many as you can do during that time frame. Some people are going to be able to do that faster. Some people are going to do that slower. But I would say somewhere in the range of 50 to 100. As you start getting customers and you start getting busier quoting and covering loads, those numbers are going to go down to probably more like 30 to 50 or 30 to 60 a day, right? But you need to continue to prospect. You need to budget and schedule that time, okay? And then eventually when you get too busy and you don't have time to prospect, you got to hire somebody to handle those operational components so that you can spend time prospecting, right? So you buy back your time. So I hope that helps. All right, guys, that's the last one for today. Listen, if you guys need help with freight broker sales, with how to get shippers, a lot of the questions I had today were about sales and how to get shippers, right? If you're looking for a sales coach, if you're looking for a mentor, if you're looking for somebody to teach you, my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator is the exact system that I use to do over $200 million as a freight broker. I put it into a coaching program. And if you want to get on the wait list for that, just go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. It's typically sold out. You'll see the details. And when spots open up, you'll get a text or an email and you'll get notified. And then at that point, you just follow the simple steps. And who knows, maybe we'll get an opportunity to work together. Again, I put over 1,000 clients through that program. We've had a lot of great success stories. Some of them have went on to build 6, 7, 8-figure freight brokerages. Very proud of them. This is the best program I've ever put together. You know, I've exited survey. Every one of the people that have completed the program, the ones that have completed the exit survey, I've asked them to rate the program 1 out of 10. And the average rating is a 9.2 out of 10. Okay. I can't get any better than that. Right. So get on the wait list. The wait list is free. The program's it's not cheap. Okay. But that's the reality. If you want to understand and have a predictable way to get customers and shippers in any market conditions, market up or market down, get on the wait list and I'll show you how. Have an awesome day. Have an awesome week. Thank you guys for being here. I'll see you next Monday on the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Thanks all.